It's time for the spoiler review. Let's go.
Everybody's a suspect!
Coming to get you, Bobber.
What has got Nards?
Welcome to my It Chapter 2 spoiler review, guys. Obviously this is for people who have seen the movie or don't mind spoilers, but if you don't want to know anything about the movie, if you don't want to see any spoilers, check out my non-spoiler review. In this review, guys, I'm not going to go over things that I spoke about already in the non-spoiler review. You can check that out if you haven't seen it already. In this video, we're going to talk about all the spoilers that I couldn't talk about in the non-spoiler review. Straight from the beginning, I want to talk about Adrian Mellon and his character and the scene at the beginning of this film. I didn't want to talk about it in the non-spoiler review just in case people didn't read the cast list for the film, because I know a lot of people don't do that, and I knew that he was going to be in the film from the cast list, but I didn't know what was going to happen. Now, if memory serves me right, the Adrian Mellon scene didn't take place at the same time the Losers Club came back as adults. I'm sure it was set a few years before that. I don't know why. I don't know why Pennywise would be around in between the times he was hibernating. So correct me if I'm wrong, leave the comments down below regarding that. But in this one, Adrian Mellon's character is set 27 years later from what happened of the events in chapter 1. And it was set quite differently as well from what I remember. I'm sure Adrian Mellon and his partner were at a gay nightclub called the Phoenix or something like that. And he came outside, everybody was drunk, and then they got threw over the bridge, and then his boyfriend got taken into the police station. He was saying it was a clown that killed him. Nobody believed him, and I'm sure the police officer who was interrogating him is the father to one of the boys who actually beat up Adrian Mellon and threw him over the bridge. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a couple of years since I read that part, but in this film he's beat up by bullies who don't like gay people, and they just threw him over the bridge. It was quite a brutal scene. A scene that I wasn't expecting to see happen so brutally, and then when he was thrown over the bridge, obviously Pennywise was going to be there, and then Pennywise does what he does best and starts eating people under the armpits. It was a great scene, but what I would have liked to have seen is more of Adrian Mellon's boyfriend and see what happened after that. I'm sure we might see that in the extended cut, but that scene just seemed like an intro scene and nothing more. I mentioned the Adrian Mellon scene being pretty brutal, but there is two other scenes that I thought were pretty brutal as well, probably a bit more brutal, and that was the one with the little girl under the bleachers. I knew she was going to die from what we saw in the trailer, but I didn't know she was going to die in the way that she did, with Pennywise again delaying his words like he did as the old lady. He was counting to 3, and the little girl was like, "When are you going to count to 3?" And then he eats that little girl. That was quite a shocking scene, just as shocking as the Georgie scene, I think. I know that Georgie has more of an impact because we know Georgie as a character, but this little girl is a human being as well, and the way she died was horrible. And then we also had the little kid that looks like the kid from Iron Man 3. We saw him throughout the film, and then again we saw him in the trailer in the funhouse, and the way he died was also brutal because Bill just couldn't get to him. You know, we seen Bill kicking the glass in the trailer, but what we didn't see is what was happening at the other side. We kind of knew what was going to happen, but with Pennywise banging his head constantly to open up the glass, smash the glass, and then to do what he did after that, just eat the little kid in front of Bill, it was absolutely horrible. And that's the moment that Bill said, "I have to defeat this." We had two cameos in this film, I'm sure you saw them. You had Stephen King, who worked in the shop and sold Bill the bike, and we had Brandon Crane, who was the original Ben Hanscom from the miniseries. He played Ben as a child, and he was in the office that the new Ben was talking to the guys on the video. When I saw Brandon Crane, I knew who it was straight away, but as soon as I seen him, I thought, oh, we might actually see the rest of the losers apart from Jonathan Brandis. But I thought maybe we'd see Seth Green show up, we'd maybe see Emily Perkins show up, but none of the rest of them showed up, and if they did, I missed them. And again, guys, if you did see any more people apart from just Brandon Crane, let me know. We also seen a cameo from Andy Muschietti in the pharmacy. I'm going to talk about the deaths and the finale, because I didn't read the finale of the book. That's the only part that I haven't read. I don't know if I haven't read it out of sheer laziness or fear for getting the movie spoiled for me, but I didn't read the book at the end anyway. So this whole thing about Chud and this little leather looking box thing, it was quite confusing. It didn't take me out of the story though, because from what happened in the miniseries took me well out and I didn't like it. But this one kept me grounded, even though it was far-fetched. It kept me grounded into wanting to know more about this chud. And I think that the way they explained it and the way the show does it was a lot better than what I heard happened in the book, with the whole turtle thing and all that kind of stuff. That would have been too far-fetched. I think they kept it as grounded as they could in this one. When we go with the deaths, all I knew about the deaths was from what I saw in the miniseries, that Eddie died in the miniseries, so I was assuming that he was going to die in this. Obviously Stan died. He died in both the movie and the miniseries. And I thought Mike would have got injured because of what happened in the miniseries, but that didn't happen. He almost got injured from Henry Bowers. And then Eddie lasted so long, I thought maybe he won't die in this, but unfortunately Eddie still died. That was one of the most emotional scenes in the film with Eddie and Richie. I was quite surprised, and I don't know again if this happened in the book, but I was quite surprised to find out that Richie was gay and that he loved Eddie. And then we found that out at the very end of the movie. We seen him as a kid put an R and a plus, but he didn't finish it. But then after Eddie passed away, he put the E there. I don't know if that means that's brother love, and he just loved him as a brother, as a friend, or if he actually did love him, because there was scenes, they done flashback scenes as well, that made us think that he could be gay, or has he just been taunted as a kid of being gay? I don't know. So it wasn't fully confirmed, but we can assume that he was gay. I was quite nervous about the finale because I didn't want to see this big stupid spider. And I was sure they were going to top what we saw in the miniseries, and I think that they did. I think that again they did the best that they could with the finale of this chapter 2. As I was watching Pennywise turn into this big massive spider, his face stayed the same, which is great because we still wanted to see Bill Skarsgård. We still wanted to see that clown, even though he wasn't a clown. We still wanted to see that in the finale, and we did. So I think that they've done the best that they could with the finale. Also, the characters throughout the film that we'd missed from the miniseries, like the witch, when Beverly went back to the house. I wanted to see that in the miniseries because I read it in the book, but we didn't. But I'm glad we saw that in the movie, and I'm glad they missed that part out in the trailer. We just seen the back of the witch in the trailer. So when we saw it happen on screen in the cinema, I got a bit of a fright because I wasn't expecting it, but I'm glad we saw it. I think the CGI wasn't perfect again. The CGI was probably on par with what we saw in chapter 1. Wasn't too disappointing because the CGI didn't bother me much, but I'm really glad that they still included the certain characters that needed CGI, like the witch. Also, the kids came back. I'm sure they filmed some, or they had some deleted scenes from chapter 1 that they put into chapter 2, so the kids obviously were still the same age. But when you look at the scenes that the kids had to film when they were a little bit older, you could tell that was CGI, but they tried their hardest to put them in the shade and down in the darkness so they didn't have to use a lot of CGI. But I think again that worked fine. The one major thing that I couldn't mention in my non-spoiler review with regards to the story itself, I think overall it was a beautiful story. I think that from beginning to end, from the beginning of chapter 1 to the end of chapter 2, it came full circle. These kids were losers. They had nobody but each other, and then when they came together they could defeat it as kids. And then in this film it was a struggle to identify themselves, like Richie for example. Who is he? Who is everybody, and what are they? Because when they are apart they're nobody. They're successful, but deep down inside they are nobodies. And then when they come together after all these years, they don't remember anything, but when they come together, they start to remember things. That could be because they're all together, it could be because they're back in Derry, but together they are strong, and it showed that really nicely in the film. I think it, again, when I mentioned it in my non-spoiler review, it had heart, especially at the end with the finale, with what happened with Eddie and the reaction to Richie. I wasn't expecting what I saw with Bill Hader. I've not seen Bill Hader in a lot of serious films, but he was very serious in this at times, especially with the death of Eddie. Because even though when Eddie died and we had the emotional scene in the cave, when they came up and they realised they defeated it, they all had a little moment, especially Richie. And again, it was beautiful. Quickly on Audra as well. I'm glad we didn't see Audra in this film as we did in the miniseries. We only saw Audra at the beginning, Bill's wife. That was it, and she didn't come back. Because when she disappeared at the beginning of this film, and she didn't come back. I completely forgot all about her anyway, so I'm glad that she didn't come in and out of the film. That would have been weird. And finally, I'm glad we've seen the kids as much as we did in chapter 2. I was expecting to see some flashbacks. I wasn't expecting to see as much flashbacks as we did, because again, the kids are a little bit older in real life. So yeah, I'm glad that they did what they did with the CGI, made the kids come into it a little bit more, because what made chapter 1 so good was seeing the kids bond, and we're still seeing that in chapter 2, so that was great. So like I said in the non-spoiler review, guys, I really loved chapter 2. I was pleasantly surprised, in fact, because going into the film, I did read a lot of bad reviews, which I was very disappointed about, because I loved chapter 1 so much. But I had to think about it myself. This is my own opinion after seeing that chapter 2. It's been 24 hours now. I gave myself time. After seeing that chapter 2, I thought it was an excellent horror movie. So if you've seen it chapter 2 and you want to talk spoilers, then you can leave all the spoilers you want down below. Everybody has the warning about this being a spoiler review anyway, so go nuts. Anyway guys, thanks a lot for watching again. Thanks for subscribing. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.